Well, good evening and welcome to the Monday night edition of the People Show on this Monday Eve to Christmas Eve. It is December the 23rd, and I am looking forward to this conversation. All right. I am really looking forward to you. We're having some trouble with one of our streams, and I want to make sure that we can get that straightened out. So let me make sure that we are. Not sure why that is a problem, but I hope that it gets corrected. For some reason, the Instagram did not come up. Don't know why that is happening. So hopefully everybody gets on tonight. Well, anyway, I want to welcome you to this Monday night edition of the People Show. We've got a fantastic program for you. Coming up in the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to be having a conversation with the Director of Health, with a gentleman by the name of Gil Thompson. And we're going to be talking with Dr. Terry Mason, who is a medical doctor. And we are going to be talking about the collision of the intersection of food and your health. You're going to find out some things in that conversation that you probably don't know, and that you are going to be shocked at some of the statistics as it relates to your diet and your medical doctors' guidance. It's going to be pretty shocking. Dr. Mason is going to provide us with a lot of information, and so is Gil Thompson. Both of them are going to be providing us with information in terms of what is the percentage of our health being dependent upon our nutrition, and how do our doctors guide us in that area. Some revealing information. And the real question is, do you want to get well? Do you want to be better? Tune in for that conversation. All right. In the meantime, of course, it is that time. It is that time that you all know that what I love to talk about, and what I think that is very important. Now, of course, there is so much going on politically that I could be talking about. We're talking about the governmental looming shutdown, talking about how Elon Musk and Donald Trump actually got played and look like complete fools. And those who supported them got played, thinking that these people are somehow going to be better for the most vulnerable people in this country. I'm not going to get into it. I can get into it, and there's a whole lot to get into, but I promise you that I will be getting into it, and I will be providing you with some factual information that you may have already gotten, but I'm going to make sure that we provide you with that, and that I provide you with that information. But you can rest assured that the people who supported what is coming is in for a real rude awakening. You can put a pin in it because it's coming. Now, the fact that it is coming, they think that they're going to be able to do a lot of things that they're not going to be able to do. And you know why? Because you and I are not going to allow for it to happen. Now, one of the things that I'm going to talk about, and then I'm going to move into what I want to talk about, because it is the holiday season and it is Christmas, it's Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, it is all celebratory. And that's what I want to talk about for these next 45 minutes. And I want to welcome all of those. Welcome you, Carol Ann from Tennessee, Mike Burries, thank you. And those of you who will be coming on in to the program. Now, it was some conversations that I had with the most vulnerable people. Look, Donald Trump, that administration, not going to do anything to impact my life. Nothing to impact my life. Personally, it's going to impact me because there are people who look like me who are going to bear the consequences of decisions that they may make or will make that will erode opportunities for people who need them, who want them, and who should get them. That's how it's going to impact me and people like me who actually give a damn, people who care about other people other than themselves. I care about people who I see suffering next door to me and around my community. I actually care about those people. I may not know their name, they don't know me, but I actually care about them. And decisions that people in offices of government make impact those people's lives. But we're going to do something about it. You and I are going to push back on it. And we're going to do what we need to do to make sure that our people don't get rolled over. Now, what we also need to make sure and understand is that there are still going to be billions and billions of dollars that was passed out of this transformational administration over the past 4 years of the Biden-Harris administration. Billions of dollars are going to be flowing. There's nothing that the Trump administration can do about erasing that or reversing those. They are coming. And we need to be focused to make sure that they do not pass over our communities. So that means that we have to be focused, we have to be organized, and we certainly have to know what it is that we need and want for our communities to thrive and be healthy in this great economy that is being turned over to the likes of what we were coming. However, they can't do anything about the work that has already been done. They can't undo all of the work that the Biden-Harris administration has been able to do. Fix the economy of a terrible economy that they inherited and fix it in turning over another great economy to the incoming administration. So the same thing happened to him in 2016. Barack Obama turned over a great economy that he himself inherited, where we were losing 700,000 jobs a month, to when they were handed over an economy where they were actually delivering an economy that were growing 74 straight months of job growth and economic stability. And because he mishandled his responsibilities, he upturned the economy and added $8 trillion to the debt. And he tried to do it again, and he's not even in an office, but he got played himself. He played himself. But we're not going to go into that. All right. So we're going to be talking about it. I'm going to be vigilant, and I want for you to certainly pay attention and be focused. Most of all, I want you to be encouraged. I want you to be encouraged. I don't want you to be in despair. Now, I know a lot of us were in despair because when I drive around this Christmas season, and I love the season of Christmas, I love the season of Hanukkah, I love the season of Kwanzaa, and this year, my Christian Judeo experience we are intersecting on Christmas Day, where Hanukkah and Christmas falls on the same day. And so our Judeo-Christian celebration starts the same day. And so for all of my Jewish brothers and sisters that I have wonderful relationships with from Chicago all the way back to Florida, and I celebrate with you all every year and love the relationships that I have, some as far back as 40 years. Stuart Koff, who was the man who gave me my first job and then gave me my first managerial position against the opposition of many of the white people in the community. So I will never forget him and always be appreciative to him, to the relationships that I have here. From there, Larry Klitzman, who actually taught me real estate as I was going into college. I knew nothing about real estate. He took me in and trained me and taught me real estate, taught me actually how to put together commercial acquisitions. And Larry Klitzman is a successful taxation attorney in Florida. We continue to stay in contact. And I have so many other relationships there. I have a couple of the Jewish rabbis that I have gone to the interfaith training with, and haven't been in contact with them over the past several years, but they both from Florida, and then there's one that I met in Louisville, Kentucky, at a National Baptist Congress where there was an interfaith conference there, and to here in Chicago, and people that I have wonderful relationships with, Larry Kaplan here, and my eviction attorney who made his transition over a year ago, and little Jerry, and he made his transition, and he and I would sit and we would have conversations about our experiences of two oppressed groups and what those experiences were like. So Jerry Citron, who was a very, strong and great, competent eviction attorney here for more than 40 something odd years, and was my attorney for, about 15 or 20 years, and became my friend. And people like Andy Skolnick, who was a person who invested in a deal. We didn't even know each other. And there was somebody who was supposed to invest in a deal that backed out of the investment, and Andy Skolnick stepped right in, and then we ended up becoming partners for about 10 years. And then Lee Ballin, who is just in their own terms, a mensch of a human being, and the Ballin family. And, these are Jewish relationships. So I call them my Judeo-Christian relationships that I have from Chicago all the way back to Florida. So I can't get with the group or get with the crowd of the anti-Jew crowd. Can't get with them. Because what it really tells is that they really don't know the history of two oppressed groups of people. And in many respects, people have misrepresented what that relationship is all about. So I can't get with them. In fact, scripturally, it is inconsistent with scripture in terms of us being antithetical to people in the Jewish community. I can't get with that group, will not get with that group. And I love the Christian Judeo relationships that I have, again, from Miami, Florida, all the way to Chicago. And so Hanukkah and Christmas falls on the exact same day. On the 25th, Hanukkah starts, Christmas falls on Wednesday. And so we celebrate. And of course, I see all of the memes that are going around calling it Christmas and all of that sort of thing. But we and I saw a greeting card. And in fact, I got it, and will be giving it to my one of my Jewish relationships for Hanukkah. All right, so I asked and I sent out a post for those who would be willing to call in and share your story of forgiveness. Share your story of forgiveness, because sharing your story of forgiveness will, by you sharing your story, it's going to help someone else who may see this now or may see it later by you sharing your story. So I want for people to call in to 951-221-8221 is our call-in number, 951-221-8221. You can call in and share your story, right? I want you to share your story and tell us your story of forgiveness, that you were able to get past your bitterness. Now, this is when I'm talking about forgiveness, because I know that there are people who are still struggling with forgiving somebody. And there are different stages of this process. They're very different stages. And I know that, but I'm speaking to those of you who are really struggling with it and you want to do it. In other words, there's a family member, and I'm talking about family. You may be a friend, but I'm talking about family members who are at odds with each other, or you are at aught, as the scriptures say, with someone in your family that you don't want to be, that in the deep recesses of your mind and your heart, you know that this is somebody that you don't want to be at odds with. But you are struggling with, how do you let it go? You're trying to figure that out. You're trying to figure out what do I do? How do I do it? I'm going to help you out. I'm going to help you out. This is how you do it. And not because I have the great secret. I had to learn too, because I was trying to figure it out. In fact, I was trying to mask that it wasn't there when it was there all the time. Let me just give you my experience that will help you to untie that knot that you have in your gut, in your heart, in your head, that you want very much of the person that hurt you or disappointed you, that you are now masking your hurt with discord, or even masking it with a pretend level of bitterness and hate. But you don't, in your own mind, in your own heart, that that's not what you are experiencing or feel, but you just are trying to figure out, how do I do this without looking like a fool? How do I do it without looking weak? Or how do I do it and not be disappointed that way by that person again? See, you're rationalizing ways to stay stuck where you don't want to be stuck. You continue to get paralyzed by the analysis of where you don't want to be. And so you continue to look for questions so that you don't have to collide with freeing yourself under the disguise that if you do this, that it's going to make you look weak. But let me help you. Take it from somebody who experienced it. Somebody who experienced it not based on what I knew, not based on any intelligence, not based on any of my Christian upbringing or training or knowledge. None of that. It had to be revealed to me because I too was stuck. I was stuck where I did not want to be. And I was being so stubborn that I could not see myself being free without looking as though I would be weak or looked upon about being weak. So let me tell you how it happened for me. This is how it happened for me. How it happened for me was when I got on a plane, reluctantly made a reservation, got on a plane, flew down to Miami on February the 28th of 2005, and got off the plane, rented a car, and went to South Miami Hospital. Still in the frame of mind that I'm just going through the motion. I'm going to go through the motion for somebody else. And at that time, I'm going to do this for my mother. I'm going to appease my mother. That's why I was doing it. So in my mind, I'm still rationalizing, still wrestling with it. And then I got to my father's hospital bedroom door. Opened the door, stood there in the doorway, looked down at the threshold. The door opened, and it was like the clouds had opened up, and this bright light, this bright radiant light was peering from this room. And I stepped over the threshold. And when I stepped over the threshold, I stepped over the threshold free and liberated, not knowing it at the time. Walked straight over to my father's bed, hugged him, said, "I love you." We cried. He said it back. What I am saying to you is, all you have to do is to take the step toward whoever it is. Go to them and take the step toward them. Don't try to figure it out. When you get there, and in your heart, you know that you want to reconcile whoever it is because you love them. You don't hate them. And you're not even angry with them. You're really more angry with yourself that you are carrying the bitterness. You're really disappointed with yourself that you can't let it go or that you won't let it go. I'm just telling you, that is the way. There is no other secret. There is no other figuring it out or making a plan. You have to just go to them and go to them trusting that you will be able to just drop the sack of bitterness that you've been carrying. You've been carrying it like I was carrying it. Nobody else forced it upon you. You have been carrying it all this time because your hurt turned into anger, turned into despising, and you try to figure all these ways to deal with the hurt. But you're still hurting. And you're not hurting because of whatever it was that was done. You probably might not even remember it, what it was. But you're hurt now because you're still carrying the bitterness and you're still separated from somebody that you actually love and don't want to be. So all I'm telling you is what happened is walk across that threshold. Walk across the threshold, dropping the sack of rocks, of bitterness, of despair, of anger with whoever it is that you know that you love and you don't want to be at odds with. On this December 23rd, before you go into the holiday of the height of the holiday celebration, whether you celebrate Hanukkah or Christmas or Kwanzaa or whatever it is in this period of time, you know that you want to let it go. Just step over the threshold of forgiveness and step into freedom. How do you do that? You do that by freeing the person who you know that you want to reconcile with because of whatever that disappointment. So whatever the disappointment is, and again, I am only talking to, and I'm trying to encourage those others, but I'm really talking to those people. You are at the precipice. You are at the fork in the road. You are right there, and you want to finally deal with it. You really want to deal with it. And you think that there's, some ritual that you have to go through. No, there is not. The only ritual that there is a decision. That's all it is a decision. Now, mind you, I didn't make a decision. I didn't make a decision. But God had fixed it so that he showed me a sign. And when I stepped over into that room, I could not take any of that bitterness in that room. I had to leave that sack of rocks outside of that room. And when I dropped the sack of rocks of bitterness, I realized that a load had been lifted from me, and I did the lifting because I released a rock, a sack that I was carrying around that I didn't have to carry around. I did that. I freed myself. I freed them and I liberated myself. I freed my father and I liberated myself. And I didn't go back to pick up that rock of bitterness, to open up that sack, to look into despair. I just dropped it. And I telling you that for the next 3 years, the remaining years of his life, I was able to have the kinds of interaction that I always wanted to have from a son to a father, and from a father to a son. And I got it. I got that. But I delivered that to myself by making a decision that I had no idea that I was going to be able to do. But I made that decision. I dropped that rock of bitterness and allowed myself to forgive my father. And by forgiving my father, I liberated myself. And I lifted the rest of the people who were in my immediate circle, my mother, my aunt, my sisters, all of those people who knew about that tension that had been there for so long was no longer there because I dropped it. So I'm saying to you, those of you who are struggling with it and you know that you want to, not talking with those who, you've got some real things that you've got to deal with, because there is a process for reconciling. So I'm not talking to those people, and I'm not trying to suggest to you that you don't need to deal with whatever those circumstances and situations are. I'm not saying that at all, right? Because there are some people who have been deeply wounded, who have been hurt grotesquely by some family members. And there is a lot of work and therapy that is needed in terms of dealing with the pain of that. I'm talking about those people who have been hurt and have been angry, but are also now you're angry and you're masking your anger, or you're hurt. You're masking your anger and it's hurting you because you don't want to be this way with whoever that particular person is, because you want to embrace that person again. And I'm just simply telling you, there ain't no secret. When you just decide to go there, I promise you, the load that you've been carrying will fall off of you like dead skin. You will shed it like a snake sheds dead skin, to never return to you again. The shackles will be gone. The shackles will dissipate. They will be gone, and you will be free. You will be free to love that person again, and to allow for that person to express their love towards you. And by doing that, you will completely revive your entire family. You will revive your entire family, because they also know what that tension is. So if you all want to call in and you want to share your story, You want to share your forgiveness, your story that could help somebody else. Give me a call at 951-221-8221. 951-221-8221. And you can tell your story. You can tell your story. We want you to tell your story. So I'm going, there we go. So, all right, now give me a call at 221-8221, 951-221-8221. Now you all see my ugly Christmas sweater. You know what it says? It says friends. That's what it says. Friends. Friends. That's what it says. So I wanted to make sure that I had my ugly Christmas sweater on. Now I can't see our executive director or producer Earl Winfrey, who is working the boards, but I know that he's got his. He may not have it on tonight, but he probably does. He probably has it on tonight, and I don't want him to outdo me. Now he probably has on a really, kind of funky one, but I wanted to make sure I wore my ugly Christmas sweater tonight so that he didn't just completely, outdo me, because he's probably got the whole headgear on and all of that. He's just very festive, very festive. All right, Brother Winfrey. So just wanted you all to see that. And mine says friends. So, and that's what I want for us to do. And I want to just drop that. I want to drop that for everybody who may be going through that cycle, that you just want to drop it and you need to give it up. All you have to do is just do that. There ain't no magic about it. Just drop it. Go to wherever that person is. Go to them wherever they are. They're probably waiting on you to show up, whether it's to their house, wherever they are. They are probably just waiting for you to show up. And I guarantee you, if you go and you show up, you're not going to have to explain anything. They're not going to explain anything. You're both going to know. And you're going to embrace. You're going to shed some tears. And those are going to be tears of relief, tears of joy, tears of reconciliation, tears of liberation that they've been waiting for, and you've been waiting for whatever the time period is that you have been waiting. But you have been longing for it, and your family members have been longing for it, and they, just didn't know how to say or what to say. They weren't sure what to say, and they have been up under tension. But I guarantee you, if you just go to that person, whoever that family member is, you don't need to go through any explanations. You both will know, because you both have been waiting and looking and trying to figure it out. But just go to them. And I guarantee you, you will be relieved of that burden of carrying around those negative rocks that you have been carrying around on your person, on your back all this time, that weight of bitterness, that all you had to do was just open your mind and your hand and drop it. Because that's what I had to do. When I walked into that hospital room where my father was and opened that door, and even up until that point, I still was masking my hurt with bitterness. But God would not allow for me to carry it another minute. When I got to that door, I had to drop it. And I dropped it. And I'm so glad that I did, because I went on to have a phenomenal relationship with my father that I did not have all of my life, that I desired and hoped for and wanted. And because of that, I carried all of this bitterness and all of these angry feelings. But they were more about being hurt than I was about being bitter and angry. I just masked it that way until I freed my father and liberated myself. That's what forgiveness is. When you forgive, forgiveness is for the other person. It is for the forgivee, but it is also for the forgiver. So when you forgive and you release someone else, you liberate yourself. So the forgiveness is a two-way exchange. That when you forgive the other person, you liberate yourself. You liberate yourself of the weight of all of that. You free yourself from having to pretend to be something that you are not. Pretending to be this person of bitterness, pretending to be this person of this, false sense of strength, when it really is not where you want to be. That's not a critique. It's not a criticism. I'm merely explaining to you what my experience was. But until I let it go, and when I let it go, now my father has gone on to glory. Every day now, I don't have to live in regret. I don't have to live in regret. If I did not reconcile myself with my father when I knew that I wanted to, before he made his transition. And thank God that I had 3 years, which were phenomenal years of relationship between me and my dad, of what I always wanted as a child. And because I didn't get it, I just bottled up this bitterness and just threw these rocks of bitterness into this sack that weighed me down over the years. That thank God I was finally able to let them go. I was finally able to let it go and to let him go and to release him. And then I was able to embrace him and he was able to embrace me. And we had 3 years that we went on to family events and family picnics and barbecues and all of that. Christmas, we were able to celebrate every one of those holidays and those experiences, even went to church together. My father, who was someone who was antithetical to the church, had become a redeemed person who actually woke me up one morning to go to sunrise service. So I was able to experience all of those things in a 3-year period. All of the things that I did not experience, I was able to have all of that delivered through this relationship of reconciliation with my father. And in turn, so I liberated and freed myself of the bitterness and have been able to go on without any regrets. And so when my father made his transition, I, in turn, ended up delivering what was supposed to be a tribute to my father. It ended up becoming the eulogy for my father's homegoing service. And my mother's sister, who had been in our lives every day, we were like her set of children, and she was like our second mother. So she was there through all of the difficulties. She was there in all of it. She said that she had never seen a more beautiful service of a homegoing service. And I get what she meant by that, because she'd seen the turmoil. She's seen all of the discontent between myself and my father's and other family members. She saw all of that, all of the, the vitriol and all of the bitterness that was happening in our household. She was a witness to all of it. And to see that we were able to reconcile, and guess what? We all were able to do that as a result of me letting it all go. It freed everybody else to reconcile with my dad, because there was this tension between me and my father. So that brought tension with the other family members, because they didn't want to feel like they were abandoning me or abandoning them. So they were stuck in a crossroad. So as a result of me letting it all go, it freed my entire family. So I'm saying to you, I'm sharing this with you, and hope that you would share your story with somebody else. Because there are people who are just bogged down and just, they don't know where to turn to. They don't know what to do. Or they don't know how to do it. They know what to do. They don't know how to do it. Because our egos get in the way. And ego is nothing more, ego, your ego is nothing more than edging God out of the process. So just edge God back in and allow for him to guide you to where you want to be. This is not just what you need to be. You want to be there, but there's something that's holding you back. There's something that's holding you back. And that something is really your own ego, your own insecurities. But you don't have to feel insecure. You don't need to worry about being insecure. You don't need to worry about somebody looking down upon you. In fact, you will look larger, because you will be the example for somebody else who may be looking right at you that is in your same place. And by you being that example, you could be their paraclete to coming out of where they are. I know it because, unbeknownst to me, when I shared it with a friend of mine, that I was on my way home, Mike James, who did the sound for me when I owned the ballroom, he used to do the sound for me. And unbeknownst to me, again, unconsciously, I had told him that I got to go home to my father's. It was his birthday, so I'm going home, and that sort of thing. Didn't realize how that struck him until when I returned, and I don't know how long it had been, maybe a week or so or whatever it is. When I came back, we had an event at the ballroom, and he was setting up at the ballroom. And he said to me, "How was the birthday party?" So I was a little bit struck because I didn't know what he was talking about. I was like, "What birthday party? I haven't gone to any birthday." He was like, how was the birthday party? I was like, Mike, what birthday party are you talking about? He's like, your birthday party. You went home to your father's birthday. You told me you were going home. I had forgot, didn't even realize that I had told him that I was going home to see my father. And when he asked me that, and when I understood that, I told him the story. I told him that that was more for me than it was for my father. That was liberating me than it was for my father. And I told him about the experience. And guess what? Mike said to me right there at that moment in the middle of the ballroom, he said, yeah, I've got some things I got to work out with my old man. And I said to him then, I said, Mike, work it out. It will be the best thing for you that you could ever do. And at that moment, I knew that he was going through the same experience that I was going through. And as a result of that, it gave him what he needed to take the steps toward reconciliation. Now, I believe that Mike James reconciled with his father. He hasn't told me that. We haven't even had a conversation about it. Now, this conversation was way back in 2005. We have not spoken about it in all these years. Some almost 20 years now. Mike James's father just recently made his transition, and he posted it saying that a great one has gone on. That sends a message to me that he reconciled with his father. And so your experience of reconciling with a family member, maybe it's not a father, maybe it's not a mother, maybe it's a brother or a sister or a cousin that you want to reconcile with. And again, I'm not talking about people who are still angry and seriously wounded. I am not talking about you. I'm not telling you that you need to just drop whatever it is. You may not be at that point. I'm talking to the people who are at that point and they want to reconcile and they just can't figure out how to get over the threshold. And all I'm sharing with you, before you go into the depths of the Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa season, so that you could really celebrate with your family like you want to celebrate with your family, so that when you're at the house or the family members are at the house, there's no division. This tension is not there in the house because you are able to reconcile. In fact, the tension is replaced with a room full of light and love and celebratory and celebration where you and the family can really take in celebrating this time that family comes together to do it. There's only a few times a year that we do it. Now, Christmas happens to be one of my most favorite. Not even about the gifts. Don't even care about the gifts. I care about the camaraderie with my family members. That's what I care about. I talked to my first cousins today. They're going, and generally, we travel down to Miami during the holiday season, right? I typically check out, shut the business down, and we go down to Miami and just hang out with the family, and we go to some family member's house and just hang out, whether it's my cousin Paulette's house, or we go to our family home or my sister's home somewhere. And all we do is do like a little potluck, right? Everybody brings one thing. Nobody is overtaxed. Everybody brings one thing. We have this potluck, and there's more food for everybody to get plenty, more than enough. And we sit around, we talk and joke and laugh and have a great time. That to me is what the celebratory of Christmas is in our family, because we are Christians. I think we might have a few people who celebrate other things like, differently, but we are largely a family of people who are followers of Christ. So we follow in the tradition of Christians. Now, we don't get into all of the gift buying and all that sort of stuff. We gift ourselves on each other. We love on each other. I love my first cousins, the McKinneys. I mean, I used to be at their house probably more than I was welcome to be so. And and we are a very close knit family. Very. They're my first cousins, and love them to death. Was on the phone earlier today with my cousin Pauline. But that's what it's all about. That's really what it's all about. And whoever you are that are paying attention to this, that you want to forgive, because you've already forgotten. You don't even remember what it was that hurt you. You don't even remember what it was. So, the whole thing says, forgive and forget. No, you are already forgotten. You're trying to figure out how to forgive them so that you can hug them and they can hug you and you all can just be cool again. And I'm telling you that the path is very easy. Just go do it. Drop the rocks of hurt that you don't even know what you're being hurt about, that happened whatever time it did, but you know that you want to reconcile with them. Just drop it. Your ego is not going to be bruised. Matter of fact, you're going to be elevated in the eyes of the people in your family. They're going to be so relieved. They're going to cry, but they're going to be tears of joy because they wanted it just as bad as you. And they wanted you to be free and that family member to be free. I am never going to stop encouraging people to forgive, because there is power in forgiving and letting go. There is power of liberation. There is power of freeing yourself so that you can go on and you can have that life of freedom from the past, and you can move forward. Because it's weighing on your health. Carrying around the bitterness weighs and depletes. It eats at your health, your spiritual, your physical, your psychological, your total being is being decayed by something that you don't want. So go ahead and do what it is that you want to do and free yourself and liberate that family member. And then thusly, you will bring the family that much closer. Do it now. Do it now. And if you can't do it now, do it tomorrow morning. Now, I know there are some people saying, well, I got to pray about it. You've already prayed about it. And the fact that you prayed about it, God guided you right here to hear this. So he's already given you the answer. Now, don't be resistant to your liberation. Don't be resistant to freeing yourself. Just go and liberate yourself so that you and your family member can reconcile, and that you don't live in any regrets. Because if you are here and that family member transition, God forbid, and you have not resolved this, you will live in regret. So free yourself of that regret. All right. We are going to transition in just a few minutes. I want to remind you, those of you that are participating in, well, we are building this independent Black voting bloc that we are starting to build, and we want to eventually get to 1 million Black people in this voting bloc in this region, where we are in Chicago, Cook County, and in the state of Illinois. And how can we do it? Easily. We do it 10 by 10 to win. 10 by 10. Everybody knows at least 10 people that they can get to follow them to go do something. Everybody knows 10 people that they can get to go do something. You were able to get 10 people to go skip school at one time, to go to a party, to do something. You got 10 people who trust your voice. So if we were to go out and to get the 10 people who trust us to be a part of this voting bloc here in Chicago, let me tell you how we can draw from it. In Chicago, right now, as of December 23rd, 2024, there are more than 660 registered Black voters in Chicago. 660. We are still the largest voting bloc of any ethnic group in Chicago. Throughout the diaspora of Cook County, there are more than 1.5 million registered Black voters, and there is another 150,000 who are eligible. And that's on a conservative number. That's eligible. Now, the one thing that Black people have never, ever done in the history of our existence is organize. We are disorganized anywhere on the planet where we exist. And in areas like where we are here in Chicago, in this region, we have the opportunity, unlike many other people who live in this country, because there are not a lot of places in this country where you have large swaths of Black people concentrated in a region like we are here in Chicago, in the Midwest, in Cook County, and the surrounding areas. But we've never organized our power so that we can make sure that the political structure responds and respects our community. So we're building this. So make sure that you text 10x10 to the number 855-909-1385. I'll put it in the chat so that you can get the Zoom meeting link that we do every Thursday at 6:30, talking about strategically building this independent Black voting bloc. We're going to have our own union of Black voters that we are going to select and slate and elect people to go to public office that will represent the interest of the Black community, from education to economic and all of those things in between. All right. So make sure we can't do this in silos. Individualism is a toxic cancer to the advancement and to the survival of Black people. Stokely Carmichael said that there is no person in this country that makes any advancement solely based on his or her talent or worth. All individual advancement is based on mass struggle. We make no progress in this world without shedding our blood. Therefore, brothers and sisters, your advancement and success does not belong to you. It belongs to the people. And if you do not use your success or advancement for the benefit of the people, it is a betrayal of the people who shed their blood for you. In other words, we are interdependent upon each other. We are interdependent upon each other. I need you, you need me, and on and on and on. Not for us to be an enemy to anybody, but for us to be pro the progression of our people. So we have to stop the chaos and stop the disorganization of ourselves so that we can impact those areas. I've been in Chicago now 39 years this past November. 39 years. And in that 39 years, we have elected 3 black mayors. We got one now. 20 black aldermen, 5 Cook County commissioners, 1 black Cook County board president now, a black lieutenant governor, 22 state representatives, 10 state senators, 4 United States congresspeople, and a host of other people in commissioners' positions, 17 mayors in the southern suburbs. We have over 193 black people in political offices right here in Illinois, more than any other state in the union. And now we're going to be getting $46 billion of investments that's going to be coming to Illinois as a result of the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Bill, the CHIPS and Science Act, the American Rescue Plan, all passed by the Biden-Harris administration. That's going to be flowing through Illinois through the Invest in America Act. So it doesn't make any difference who the administration is now. That money is already appropriated and coming. So we need to make sure that we are organized so that our communities don't get rolled over, but that our communities get invested in, that we can lift our communities and our communities can thrive. So we need not be ignorant about that. All right, listen, I want to get into this conversation that I have been looking forward to. I see my guests are in the green room. We are going to be talking about this. I want you all to scoot your chairs up, turn your televisions off, and get ready for some information that you probably have not heard in the way that it is going to be presented to you today. And joining me for this conversation are 2 people who I know, and one I've known for quite some time, and the other I met recently through that we had to actually funeralize a dear friend of ours who passed as a result of COVID-19 during the early stages of the COVID-19 virus. So joining me now is Dr. Terry Mason, who's a medical doctor, and he is also the host of A Doctor in a House on WVON 1690 AM, who he's been there for more than 30 years. I used to host a program on that show. And my other guest is Brother Gil Thompson, who is the director of MAD Health Education. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for being here. Gil, you reached out to me about this conversation, and when you reached out to me about the conversation of the intersection of our medical health as it relates to nutrition and our doctors, and you shared some things with me that I had never heard before in that context, and you wanted to have a conversation about it and have a discussion about it. And I said to you, well, in order for us to have that conversation, we need to have a balanced conversation. So we need to have somebody from the medical side to bookcase this conversation. And I could think of nobody better to anchor that than Dr. Terry Mason, who I reached out to, and he said that he would be happy to do it. So thank you all both for being here for this wonderful conversation. And I think it's going to be wonderful to help a lot of people. Because certainly it's going to, already I have been helped by it, and there are other people who have just been waiting to hear this conversation. So Gil, why don't you start by introducing yourself? Let us tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay. First of all, I feel like I'm walking in tall cotton with you and Dr. Terry here. So you got to. I'm a little excited. I'm a little overwhelmed. I'm not used to being around such prestigious individuals. So thank you for having me, and thank you, Dr. Mason. It's not often that the general public gets to talk to a doctor directly. But to answer your question, Mark, because I digressed a little bit, I'm a CPS, product of CPS. Grew up in Chicago many years ago. I'm not going to tell my age too much, but went on to, like most kids in Chicago, play a little basketball, left there, and went and played at Alcorn State for 4 years, left there and ventured out into Mississippi, became an NFL sports agent for 30 years. Yeah, so I've had a little bit of a various background. But what brought me to this point is constant engagement with medical doctors who are very well trained at what they do. They're very good at what they do, the majority of them. They're thorough, they're caring, they're just limited with their time. And I felt as if my particular doctor wasn't giving me the full scoop. My doctor, for example, I had high blood pressure. My doctor, I said something to her about potassium, and she said, potassium has nothing to do with high blood pressure. And so I knew right then something's not right here. So I did some investigating, and what I discovered was that most of the time, and potassium is what you call a micronutrient, okay? So with your diet, which is primarily what's going to drive your health, the macronutrients and the micronutrients are going to go a long way in determining how healthy you are and how long your health span lasts. So with that being said, the more I investigated the situation and the more I started engaging with medical doctors, the more I realized that something in the system is amiss. And for an example, short version, my dad is on the South Side, and he was having some issues, and we sit down with his doctor, and the doctor was asking him questions about what do you eat, general questions. And he said, what do you have for breakfast? He said, I have a waffle and banana. And with me going through nutrition school at Stanford, I knew that bananas and waffles turn into glucose. That turns into sugar, and his glucose levels was at a 148, which he should be under 100 or less. So I said, no, he can't have that. And then I noticed the doctor had to go through the files to try to figure out, which I can understand that he's got probably 2,000 patients. When they've got so many patients they're turning over month after month after month. So they're against the wall. There's a doctor shortage. But so I realized then that as individuals, we have to know our markers, try to understand what's going on with our bodies, primarily focus more on diet and exercise, which in order to maintain your health or prevent bad health, you can influence, and I don't know, Dr. Mason, you're probably familiar with this term, epigenetics.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
in epigenetics, we're told that all your family history's got this or that, but you can, through epigenetics, you can disable, for lack of a better word, the bad genes. You can disable it through epigenetics. And you also have to understand the basic premise from my position, Doc. You have to understand there's two armies inside your body. It's bacteria. There's a good army and there's a bad army. And the more bad food you eat, and the more you do not exercise, you are empowering the bad army and you're reducing the good army. The good army can fight for you build up your immunity system. It can protect you. You can have a better lifestyle. But when you eat this processed food, which is full of these seed oils, which is what we do in our community, we eat a lot of fried chicken, which French fries, and I think there's a study recently that said a plate of French fries is as bad as a cigarette because of the seed oil. So what our people have to understand and become educated about is eating and exercising is going to go a long way in you being healthy and having a long lifespan. For me, I don't want to live to 80 and I'm in bedridden from 70 to 80 for 10 years. If I live to 80, I want to be healthy until 79 and a half or 79.999 for me.
Yes.
So that's kind of what my position is. But to go back to the doctor, just to kind of close it, and I'll let Dr. Mason take the floor. So with my dad, the other thing I found out that really irked me, and I'm afraid this is going on a lot on the South Side, probably. So his cholesterol was 125, 128, somewhere around there, which is in the yellow, which is a cautionary for being low. And his doctor said, "Oh, your cholesterol is great." So then we go for a follow-up, and I'm giving you some other things. So we go for a follow-up. The result come back at 160, which if you've ever played darts, that's in the bullseye, okay? That's in the middle. And the doctor was recommending drugs. Why are you recommending drugs and he's in the middle? So I go back to the facility and I'm asking questions because, again, I understand the blood work, and everybody should try to understand their blood work so they can know what's going on inside their body. So I asked about that. And they said, well, they huddled up and they came back and said, well, we were worried about his elevation. He elevated from 129 to 160. We wanted to suppress his elevation, which I had never heard that. But what they were not ready for is I knew his blood work. His kidneys had went from a 90 to a 65. Okay, 60 is the area that you don't want to go below. So if you're controlling elevation and de-elevation, why wasn't he giving something about his kidneys? And they just lost their mind when I asked them that. So the problem is, we've got some professionals who don't know, and they try to camouflage that they don't know instead of let's get a team together, let's get our people to understand what they need to do, take some kind of stewardship in their own health by knowing what the markers mean, by better working with their doctors. And sometimes when we're walking around Walmart, let's not get on these carts. Let's kind of walk. Let's use these carts all over Walmart. I see that, it just drives me crazy because I know my people need to exercise, and we need those micronutrients that we're not going to get from food. Probably got to get supplements, especially the vitamin D thing, which is this whole dynamic of diet and exercise, macronutrients and micronutrients. We ain't gonna cover this tonight because we are so far behind as a people with our knowledge. We are so far. There's so much territory and information that needs to be covered. So we can give a overview, which is you're gonna have to exercise. That's the first thing. We do not want to walk. We do not want to get on a treadmill. We do not want to protect our heart, which is you got to get the heart rate up when you exercise. And if you're not getting that heart rate up, you're not doing as good a job as you can do for yourself. So anyway, I went all over the place, but
all right. Well, let me bring it back to where we actually started. What you brought to me is what I'm calling somewhat of a collision, and you talked about the relationship between food or our diet and that of our medical guidance from doctors. And one of the things that you said to me that I had never thought about, and Dr. Mason always talks about this on his program. It's always about behavior, practices, right? And you said that most doctors, if you ask what is the percentage of that is geared towards our being healthy or not being healthy, of our diet, somewhere in there, and what is the percentage of that? And you said that the doctor said it's about 90%. Then you said that you asked the doctor how much training had they received during their medical training, and they said something about 10%, right? So you talked about you wanted to have this conversation, and of course I reached out to Dr. Mason, and Dr. Mason, I want for him to share the conversation that he and I had about that question when I raised it to him, because I had never ever asked that question of a doctor, never even thought about it in those terms of what a doctor's training was. Dr. Mason.
Well, thank you. And I'm grateful to be on this panel with you two distinguished gentlemen. And we're going to have a very frank and honest talk. Some of it may shock people, but that's okay. We need to be shocked once in a while because we sleep. So one of the things I was sharing with Mark was that I went to Loyola undergrad and then went to the University of Illinois Medical School in Chicago, and was there medical school for 4 years, and then did a residency in surgery and urology specifically for another 5 years after that. But let me just say this. The American medical training does worse than a piss poor job in teaching education. I mean, education of nutrition. Now, it's more than about the nutrition is not just about getting this number of this, number of that, but it also includes other things that are as important as some of those micronutrients, and that is fiber. And fiber only comes out of one place, plants. That's the only place you don't get no fiber out of a chicken leg. You don't get no fiber out of a steak. You don't get a fiber, any of that stuff. If we look to Mark's point earlier at what we are dying from, we are dying from food-related diseases. Now, you have to understand that when I started med school in the late 70s, mid 70s, it was easy to see why we are and why you make the remark you made. And that's because in the 4 years of medical school education I had at the University of Illinois in Chicago, I had 40, we all as freshmen, all as new docs, only got 40 minutes of education around nutrition in 4 years. And that really wasn't about nutrition. It was really talking about the diseases caused by malnutrition, like scurvy for vitamin C, and the B12 problems, iron problems, and so on and so forth. So the thing that I would say, and we can move forward, is that we're not being taught, at least and when I was there, and as I've talked to some of the newer people there, it hasn't changed very much. Because what I have to say now is going to sound really bad, but it is the truth. The medical profession, we are, part of our job is being arbiters with the pharmaceutical companies. And those, and I'm not saying medicines aren't important. Medicines are very important when appropriately used. But medicines rarely cure anything. They may help control, but they don't cure. And as docs, we didn't get any information about nutrition. Maybe we learned a little about iron deficiency anemia or scurvy or something like that. But those are things that you see people that are coming from other countries, third world countries, and we've got some of that beginning here. So the only other point I wanted to make with this whole thing is that as a physician, understanding that we never got any real nutrition at all. We learned a little about some very basic things, but we never really learned. So the doctors that you see, that wasn't what we were taught. And it wasn't because they didn't go to get it. It just wasn't being offered. You have to understand that even those kinds of things are going to get input from things like the Food and Drug Administration, the people over the egg boards, the people that deal with the dairy farmers. So and everyone should look at a movie called Food Inc. Food Inc. Because it'll help pull the veil off of what's really going on, so we can understand why we're in the predicament that we are. Not to mention that we have an explosion of foods that appeal to some three basic kinds of taste: salty, oily or greasy, and sweet. Those are the three major tastes that they market us to death, literally to death. The biggest diabetes is one of the big things, and I'm not going to go much further, Mark, because I want to stop and let you guys ask questions. But the one thing I did when I came out, actually while I was still in practice, is we started a thing called the Center for New Life in the practice. The thing was we couldn't get the insurance companies to help the patients pay for what we were doing. And what we were doing is doing nutrition. And I'm not talking about just some more pills or some more powders or stuff like that, but food. You need to eat food, and you need to eat food that comes out of the ground, because that's the only food that contains fiber. And you need fiber in order to move your waste products out into the toilet. And you need it for other vitamins, other bacteria bacteria body needs. So this is a very, I love this topic, and we have to do better. And you got to understand, there's no real money in well people. If everybody is well, there's no money.
Mm-hmm.
Money is not in curing anybody either. The money is managing a disease. That's
correct.
That's what our system does. It manages disease, and it tells us many times that those things don't work. Things like, eating. I was a guy, and I'll stop right here. I was a guy when I was in med school. I ate horrible, really bad, and that's because we just did. But I can tell you this: that when I was in my residency, I ate a porterhouse steak every day. I used to go to Mr. G's and have me cut 7 steaks every week, and I ate one every day. And that bought me a trip to the cardiac catheterization lab, where I now have 3 stents in my heart. And it then made me change drastically the way I was eating. And there's lots of information out there, and I think I'll stop right here and take any questions.
Well, so Gil, so what is it that you actually do? And then because I want to bridge this to Dr. Mason and Gil, that for people to understand that if our health is dependent upon 90% of our food behavior
and exercise,
right, and exercise, then and doctors are not trained at all, if it's 10% of in your case 40 minutes, 4 years of medical school. How is it that we are dependent upon the way we eat and what type of food, exercise, that is not a part of the
Make America Great Again?
That's not a part of making us well again.
Exactly. Right?
Mm-hmm. That's not a part of making us well again.
Yeah, I'll get you.
So what how do you bridge that? How do you bridge that even, and this question is, I guess, is for you, Dr. Mason, and then go back to you, Terry. But how do you bridge that in terms of when you are speaking to your colleagues and you're speaking to people who are in this profession and in this study, what's the conversation that you have between what you do, Gil, and the medical professionals?
Okay, so here's the deal. First of all, you have to realize, like doctor stated, there's no money in it for them. I was at a poker table recently, and that's the conversation you and I had. And the doctor admitted, if y'all well, I ain't gonna make no money. I'm gonna be broke. So with my experience with the majority of the medical professionals, is this is not something they touch for whatever reason. So what has to happen is we have to educate our people to motivate them to be self-educate, or to get with some professionals who can help them understand how to develop a roadmap and go outside of the traditional avenue of go to your doctor for your checkup and okay, I'm good. And a lot of times the right tests, well, not enough tests are ran. There's something called a CAC score, which is the coronary artery calcium score, which can tell you your risk of a heart attack. Okay. And when your risk factor, and when I said something to my doctor about it, because I'm educated, my doctor said, well, the insurance ain't gonna pay for it, so I'm not gonna order it. And I said, I'll pay for it, because if I can go buy my kid a pair of Air Jordan or my grandson a pair of Air Jordan, because just only costs like $125, $150, depending on where you go, I can at least, and everyone doesn't have to have that. But I think if you're borderline, and Doc can probably talk to that better than me. But for me, I want all the tests. I told him, give me a pap smear if you can. I want everything, because I want to check my system out. So to get to your point, your question is, how do we bridge it? We bridge it by having conversations like this, making people aware. If you're going to your doctor for preventive stuff or to maintain good health, that's not going to happen. You go to your doctor and they're going, you want to check up and you get your blood work done and all that kind of jazz. If you're getting extensive blood work, sometimes you're just getting the bare minimum. But you got to dig deeper if you want to be healthy. And if you want to stay away from cancer and heart attacks, which is the top two killers, then you've got to diet better and you've got to exercise. I just came from Ghana, okay? And all the way in Ghana, they got Wendy's, they got McDonald's, they got Kentucky Fried Chicken in Ghana. Not to mention when I was in Vietnam, when I was in Bangkok, they called it the standard American diet, SAD diet, standard American diet, because it's what's killing us. And it's killing our people. And to answer your question, how do we get here? Some of it started back in the 50s with a doctor from Harvard named Frederick Stare. And he pretty much compromised the report on sugar. And you can Google this. You can Google this. If you type in Dr. Frederick Stare, Harvard, he was at Harvard University professor. And he was given the task of doing a study to see if sugar was something that was harmful or not. And he took money from the sugar industry to say it is not. And he continued to take money from the sugar industry. So that's how sugar got pushed so deep into the American culture. So that's one of the things that happened. You got to understand this thing is about, it's not about your health. It's about money. It's about the drug companies who hire doctors, some doctors to speak at maybe a doctor's convention, or they give them certain perks. There's about people on the American Heart Association board who have been proven to be compromised. So this thing is so big. So the only thing you got is yourself. Nobody cares more about your health than you. So what are you going to do about it?
Well, Dr. Mason, so at that very point there, so what should people, what kinds of engagement and what kinds of questions should people be engaging their doctors with now that people are going to visit their doctor? They're going for checkups and this or that or the other. What should their language be when they're going to see their doctor as it relates to their nutritional behavior?
Well, that's a tough that's a tough one because we don't have a good answer for those people because we haven't been trained. Now, there have been a number of physicians now, myself among them, who have begun to take on this because it's the right thing to do and train ourselves. There are places that you can go. I just came back from a meeting down in Houston, Texas, and it was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Baxter Montgomery, who has a number of books. And one of the first books he wrote is a food classification system to help you sort through what the things you're doing are, either how much they're helping you or hurting you. And so it's really, really, really quite good. The other thing I would say is that this isn't going to change. The only way it begins to change, let me just tell you very briefly, we never even used to think about nutrition. When I started as a general surgery resident a long time ago, when people had pancreatic cancer, that's a very bad cancer, real bad. And it was a big operation we used to do, taking out the pancreas and some other things at that time. And the problem is when you do that, the pancreas is very much involved in our digestion and providing some of the environments for us to heal ourselves. And that's oversimplifying it, but that's what it's doing. And it's also involved in making insulin. It's involved in a number of functions. And so what we learned is that when they had these cancers, and we used to do these big operations on people, but the people weren't doing well. They weren't healing well. And that was, to make a long story short, we neglected nutrition because we didn't know. And so now they ended up creating a whole area that's called hyperalimentation, which is putting the nutrients in an IV formula and then putting it through your vein.
Anthony Williams.
I'm sorry about that. If somebody come. One of the things we do is we get together with our smoothies to talk about different. But anyway, these particular things are so important, and there are doctors all over the country that are now, and I can name lots of them, that are now taking on this idea of nutrition and first of all, we had to learn on our own. And you go to the places, there are conferences now where you can learn. You probably heard of people talk about different types of diets. People talk about, and I don't like the word diet, by the way. I don't like that word at all. Why would I want to do something that has die in the first three letters of the thing? Not going to do that. And I'm going to give this homage to Prince Asiel Ben Israel, and what he talked about, and when we did lectures together, he told me, he said, we need to talk about a live it, not a diet, but a live it. And that's what we want to do now. And that's why I put together an organization that we're working with. I don't know if I can mention it's on your show or not.
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's called God's Pharmacy. And God's Pharmacy came together because a group of us sat down and said, how do we know what we're really eating if you're depending on somebody else to grow it for you? So we then put together and I'll talk about this more at a later time, where we actually allow people to invest in a food cooperative. And what it allows you to do is you pay one fee for the entire growing season, but we get all organic, highly soil that has been redone. We have an amazing farmer brother that has been doing this for a long time. We have other people that are involved in making sure that our soil is rich enough that even if we grow the plant, we'll be able to extract enough to give us what we need. And so that's what you'll hear a lot more about. I'll be talking, to your point, Mark, more about this as we get ready to gear up for next year. But if, the other question comes out of the Bible, and it's John 5, verses 2 through 9. But I'm just going to give you the one part And that's the name of the company that we're going to do now. It's called Do You Want to Be Well? See, you got to want to be well, because you have to go out of your way to really go over the stuff that's killing you to do well. You know, the medical industry knew 50 years almost before it was finally, and the tobacco manufacturers were finally had to admit that cigarette smoking causes cancer. We didn't know that was a hard fight.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to, and in terms of food, we have to, and that's why every year now, for the last few years, we've been involved in this. And Mark, I'll be happy to talk to you more about it another time. But I believe so strongly that the food is the rate limiting thing, and I'm going to say why. At Trinity United Church of Christ, we decided to put it to a test, because, you know, in God we trust. Others, all others must have data. So we did a study. We brought in the brother who was then the president of the American College of Cardiology. That cardiology group has over 40,000 members across the world, and this brother was the president in that group. Kim Williams is his name, and he is one of the few docs that actually incorporate fruits and vegetables as a part of the treatment program for a lot of the things that we have, because most of the things we have are caused by the foods we eat. And when we're eating processed food, these things create inflammation. And when we're eating a lot of these other processed foods, what we found is that when we created, looking at these, an inflammatory marker called TMAO, trimethylamine oxide. And what it does is that and I'm not to take you through a whole course, but it actually helps the inflammation. And that inflammation is responsible for things like cancers, all of these things. And so we really started trying to get that message out, that we need to get our people to eat more stuff that comes out of the ground than things that walk on it, fly over it, and swim in it.
Well, define what processed food. What's the definition of processed food? We hear that all the time, but I am not convinced that most of us really know what the real definition of processed foods is. What is processed food?
Anything that's not in its natural state, it's probably processed. Now,
So
when I say
food.
all your fast food, and you got to look at it. You got to look at what's happening with all our fast foods, and that's why we call them fast foods.
Well, what about somebody going to the grocery store and they're buying a steak, or they're buying raw chicken, or they're buying canned goods, or is any of that considered to be processed foods?
Yes, a lot of it is.
Yeah.
If it comes out of a box, bottle, or a can, it absolutely is. And unfortunately, the processing of some of the chickens, that's why I want you to tell your listeners to watch this movie, Food Inc., because it tells us about the different industries and the control that these industries have in making determinations about all kinds of things that affect the animals that are going to later be slaughtered for us to eat. And we also are want to make sure that the fruits and vegetables are not sprayed or things of this nature to help these foods. And of course, it costs more, but we want to grow foods in the natural environment, in God's environment, and we'll get what we need. And we need to drink water, not stuff that has water in it, but we need to drink water, and there's no substitute for that. And it doesn't matter what its pH is. If it's good natural water, good water, it's good water. We should drink it, because we don't drink nearly enough of this. And so in the study that we did, we took the people and we put people on, they were on a regular kind of diet. And then we had a group that we put on a controlled diet that was all plant-based. And what we found is that the people who participated and who ate the plant-based food, their inflammatory markers dropped 42% in 4 weeks. 42%. No medication will ever do that. And so that's why I'm convinced, convicted, and not change.
Right. Okay. Gil.
Yeah, let me add this, and I'll piggyback. I agree with everything he said. One of the things, though, in Stanford that they taught us was don't expect someone to eat 100% of what they need to eat. So they taught us try to at least get them to eat 75 to 80% of that. Now, with that being said, your processed food and your ultra processed food, which is your fast food chain stuff, you definitely need to stay away from that. Primarily, you stay away from restaurants. I hate to break the bad news to you. There's something called, obviously, avocado oil, which is not as bad if you just got to have some fried chicken, but I wouldn't recommend it. But if you just got to have it, if you got to transition yourself, because some of them, I ain't going to get my chicken up, I ain't going to get my bacon up. Okay, well, and like Doc said, there's some things you have to, it's not always what you're willing to do, it's what you're willing to sacrifice to be healthy. What are you willing to sacrifice? So in order to do that, and let's not forget exercise.
Mm-hmm.
You have to exercise, even if it's just a walk, especially if you want to lose weight. You'd be surprised. A simple walk can help you lose weight. And I started doing 15 minutes, then that grew into 2 hours I was able to do. I just walked 15 minutes one way, and then I got to walk back another 15, so 30 minutes. Now I can walk an hour that way and an hour back, but I lost like 60 pounds, 60, 70 pounds doing it over a 7-month period. But it was, and then there's also something else, and Doc's probably familiar with this. It's something called autophagy. Okay? And autophagy will replenish the cells in your body. It will give you new cells, like a complete oil change inside your body. AUTOPHAGY. And if you induce autophagy into your body, which I do it through fasting, you can do it through fasting. It's almost like having a brand new body. You feel so much better. Now I have to do 24 hours. 24, 48, 24, 36, 48. And I've done 2 72-hour fasts. But there are some studies that say if you can do 2 72-hour fasts a year, then your cancer risk drops dramatically. Now, there's some people say, "Oh, I can't give up my food. I can't but I drink water, and I'm cleaning my system out. So if I eat, and I'm a sucker for French fries, but I cook mine in avocado oil. If I eat a few French fries and eat a little bad, if I do that fasting, I don't feel so bad. And at my age now, I can run sprints. I just ran 25 sprints yesterday. And then when I came in from the sprints, I walked up 6 flights of stairs. Like it ain't nothing, but that's the exercise piece that you got to add to your food. And a lot of people eat salads. That's plant-based. You can get you a big old salad,
Mm-hmm.
and you can have yourself a good time, and you still gonna be satisfied. You'll be what we want you to do is have what they call satiety. We want you to have some of a full feeling after you eat. But you need, like Doc said, that fiber. You got to have that fiber, which is going to be your fruits and vegetables, beans, things like that come from a plant. But still, to the listeners out there, number one, you got to take account of your own health, okay? Which is understanding what your markers are, number one. Each marker has a bearing on what's going on inside your body. You should educate yourself on that. You should also try to transition to eating as much plant-based food as you can, and you got to exercise. And if you want to live here, and exercise means getting your heart rate up and lifting weights, because as you get older, your strength level is going to decline. And if it declines too far, you can't live alone. You can't live independently.
All right, let me ask you this, Dr. Mason. My wife is experiencing some autoimmune disorders, and it is probably attributed to, they know it's attributed to a statin that she was taking, which was through a cholesterol prescription. Now, she took herself off of the cholesterol prescription well over a year ago. If she had not done that, her inflammation or disorder could be worse. There are several people who now that we're going through this, that she has learned that have worse conditions as a result of this statin. Now, in saying that going to the doctor with her and going to her doctor's appointment, not a single time that any one of the doctors talked about what her eating habits should be, or even asked the question about what her eating habits are. Not one time.
Well, did you want me to respond to that?
Yes.
Yeah. They can't respond because they don't know, because they've not been taught. And unless you go someplace and get this education at your own expense, at the places that give good information and not just trying to push out a product, you won't get it. And that's why what we've been doing to do and bring this kind of information, and I've been trying to bring it on my show too, is to let people know it's real simple. Eat real food, drink water. Eat real food and drink water. Now, when I say eat real food, and I'm going to caveat that by saying I am biased toward more plant-based eating. And I'm not talking about plants that you done smothered in grease and all that other kind of stuff. But I'm saying that we really do need to think more about it. And, we historically, many of us, and, we started looking at our history, we were pretty much vegetarians anyway, in many places. And when I go to Ghana in different places, yes. And to your point, the last time I went to Ghana, I've been there about 9 times. And the last time I went there, some of the younger guys now that were young sons of the and daughters of folks that I visited the first time I went many years ago, and they felt so good about seeing me come back. Was they then decided they were going to take me out to dinner, and they took me to downtown Accra, and we went to a McDonald's. And I say that. No, this is. I wanted to cry, because what's happening is when you look at, and I have a friend of mine that was over the health region over by Trinidad and Tobago and a couple other islands. But what they're finding now is that as they are now changing, and because of the influence of the American society on what's going on, more of the young people are eating this stuff. And now they're beginning to start having the diseases they didn't have before in the numbers where they never had before, when they were eating primarily the high fiber foods that they were born on and fed.
Yeah, I got a question, Mark, about your wife's cholesterol. And Doc, you chime in on it if you can. Did they ever talk to you about the HDL to triglycerides ratio prior to her?
They may have talked to her about that, but in dealing with the inflammation, the cholesterol was not talked about, in that term. They were really trying to make the connection as to what the causation of the inflammation or the autoimmune disorder, what the causation of it. They didn't talk, and discovering, because they did a biopsy and then coming back from the biopsy, then they prescribed medication, right? They prescribed medication. So they did the analysis, which, they needed to find out what it was. And they still don't know exactly what the causation is. They practice medicine. Yeah, they think they have an idea of what the causation is, but there was only the linkage between doing the analysis and then making a prescription of medication for her to take. In one of the medications, they said that she has to take for 2 years. They want prednisone or something like that for 2 years.
They want you doped up. But here's the thing: if you fast some, if you eat more plant-based or change your diet and you exercise, those numbers will, her cholesterol will be much improved. And it'll be quicker than you think. Much quicker than you think. Do you agree or disagree with that, Doc?
Oh, absolutely. I did it myself. I told you I was the guy that was eating a steak every day. And I ended up with coronary artery disease. I wasn't surprised when I started looking back at what was in the meat that I was eating. And and sometimes you like it well marbled, where you get all the nice, good, killing you kind of fat, that the very saturated fat. And I tell you, the other thing is that
So are you saying that there is no good meat that people could eat at all? There's no.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Okay.
I'm not. I'm talking more about the fat that's in the meat and the inflammation that ensues from eating it. And I tell anybody, I made this not because I want to, I'm a sort of a delayed old hippie or something like that. No, I eat like this because I want to eat to live.
Right.
If you want to stop eating and dying from it, or having all these other maladies, start eating good food that comes out of the ground. That's what you need. And you'll be surprised.
So one of the viewers said that he lost over 50 pounds by just eating watermelon, organic watermelon. Right now, I only eat watermelons that come out of the ground. I don't eat synthetically made grown watermelon. I only eat watermelons that come out of the ground. So they got to have, and I learned this, from the South, that the way that you can determine whether it's a synthetically grown watermelon or an organically grown watermelon is organically grown watermelons have black seeds. Synthetically grown watermelon only have white seeds.
But I think that what I'd like to do, Mark, and what I'm doing now is we are trying to expand this thing so we can grow food in Illinois is a big farm state. I mean, huge, but we need to be far more aggressive at growing our own food, because you don't know what some of these sprays and pesticides and all this other stuff that is on the food. And the only way, and I hate to say it, but the only way you know what you're eating is you got to grow it yourself.
Yeah. Let me take a little bit of a break here, because we're coming to the end of the program, but we're going to continue. But we're coming to the end of the program on intellectualradio.com. As I want to thank you all for tuning in to the Monday night edition of the People Show on intellectualradio.com. We have one more program in this year. We will be on the air next Monday night, which will be the last broadcast for the year of 2024. And we're going to continue our conversation talking about things just like this, how we make decisions to make life better for ourselves in terms of our food, in terms of all of those things that are important. And so if you want to stick with us, we're going to continue this conversation beyond the hour, but the program is going to live in 2 minutes on intellectualradio.com. I want to thank you all for tuning in to the program. All right, Dr. Mason.
Yes, sir.
Listen, we have some of the things that you started talking about, or some of the things you were talking about. I started thinking about that we need some of the things that we need to do in terms of doctors. If this is important, then, and doctors are not trained, then maybe we need to have legislation in place that doctors need to have continuing education in this area.
Yeah, we just have to make sure that, I would say I would support that, except that I want to make sure that a lot of the stuff that the Food and Drug Administration and what have you and the Agriculture Association, the Dairy Association. You know where I'm going with all this.
Mhm.
They will want to sanitize stuff so much, um, because it would be a major financial hit. And but at that's why I don't go to look for those sanctions in those areas, because it's not going to happen. We have to decide. We are smart. Everybody knows what inflammation is. If you took sandpaper and rubbed your wrist and it started to bleed, then there'd be a coagulum of blood called the clot or the scab, where the skin gets healed underneath it. And then what do we do? 3 or 4 hours later, we do the same thing again with eating another food that's full of sandpaper like activities to your blood vessels from one point of view with the inflammation. And you're going to hear a lot more about inflammation. And the major source of inflammation is
Mhm.
food. That's the major source. And you don't need to take anti-inflammatories for that. You just need to not eat that. Those things
You
are good. And at
need to
some point,
change the food practice.
that's all. You don't have to, and save your money and save your life. We want to stay well. That chapter, do you want to be well? And I say to people who say yes to that, then act like it. You have to make a change. And those medications, you got to understand, medications, for the most part, don't cure things. They allow you to dial down the damage enough so you can keep going. But I want you to know I'm supportive of my doctor colleagues out there. I was out there, but I had to make the change myself. And I started with me, and I made the change. And it can be done. And I can tell you, Mark, you might remember I was pretty pudgy for one point in time, and I failed, I'm sorry, what I call the Mason test. And for the men in the audience, the Mason test is this: when you go to shower, when you take your shower or bath, when you get out, and I want you to stand straight up without a towel or anything on. I want you to stand straight up and look straight down. And if you can't see your entire male organ, you are in trouble already, because now you're collecting that fat around the abdomen, which has, and we could talk about that at another time, but that's very dangerous, and will actually begin to be involved in a process where it'll affect your testosterone production. And as you know, I was a doctor that dealt a lot of dealt with a lot of erectile dysfunction, and the erectile dysfunction is probably one of the early stages that you already have disseminated disease throughout the rest of your body, but it hasn't shown itself yet. But it will.
Okay. Listen, I enjoy this conversation, and thank you both very much for coming on. But I don't want this to be a one-off. I don't do one-offs on this program. This program is geared towards bringing people the facts about everything in terms of making our lives better. And this is extraordinarily important. This information is important. We certainly won't be able to do it all in one setting, but I certainly want to ask the both of you that we could start this dialogue to where we are doing this, whether it becomes monthly or quarterly, but that we continue to have these conversations to educate us on what we need to do in order for us to live and for order for us to live better. And much of that has to do with our own decisions that we make, but people need help in that area. There are many of us who don't know, right? But they certainly need help so that they can make better decisions when they go to the grocery store, and make better decisions that when they decide to drive down the street and stop to buy some of that foods. And here we are going into the celebratory season where we tend to become a lot more relaxed in terms of, saying, well, it's Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, whatever, you identify with. And so I'm just going to do anything. Now, my wife and I, we eat a lot of salad. We eat a lot of salad, and we eat a lot of salmon. Now, I give blood. I give blood, but I give platelets because that's a real shortage in our communities.
Mhm.
And I have the O uh, O positive, which is rare. So I have that. So there is a need for platelets. So I give platelets on a regular basis. Now, one of the areas that I need help in is because to give platelets, you have to have an iron level that has to be at a minimum of 13.2 in order to give platelets, because you are on the, this process takes 120 minutes in order for them to go through its process of taking the platelets, because they take the blood and then take the platelets and then put the blood back, or the plasma back, I should say. But it takes about 120 minutes for that process to take place. Now, I've had a couple of times that I was not able to give because my iron levels were below the minimum. So, because I don't eat a lot of meat anymore. So I used to be a steak lover now, and I still, every now and then get it. But the way that I prepare a steak is I put it in a pan. I put it in a pan, and I guess cook it in lemon juice and water. I don't fry it. I cook it in lemon juice and water. Um, that way. I don't know if that's a healthier way of preparing it or not. But what other recommendations would you recommend for me other than eating, more meat to increase my iron levels?
What I'll do is this. I'll take it one better than that for you. I will get information and then I'll exchange it to you by email,
Okay. All right.
because I mean it's important to know. And let me thank you for donating platelets. It's a very difficult thing, and when people need them, they really need them. So thank you for that, Art. Thanks for doing that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I've been doing it for probably about, I guess, 10 years now, that I have been doing. I started with Life Source. Actually started as a result of being on WVON. The Gift of Hope came, and they worked with Life Source, and I started giving at that time, and then they came in and were a sponsor. So I do it on a regular basis, and during the Christmas season I do it weekly. I do it for 6 weeks during the holiday season, because it is one of the times of the year that there are the lowest um, availability of platelets. So I encourage people, if you are not a donor, please consider being a donor. All right, gentlemen, listen, we're gonna close this out here. So I want to give both of you the opportunity to give us some final remarks for this first discussion. But um, I certainly want Gil and for Dr. Mason for us to come back and to do this again, to educate our people and giving them the information that they need in order to live.
Doc, you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
No, you can go first, man.
Go ahead, Gil.
Okay. So the first thing I want to say is, you mentioned legislate. People need to do their own self-legislation. You don't need to wait on the government to design a system, which they've had all your life to design a system for you. You better do it yourself. And you can't go to the doctor to stay healthy or prevent problems. If you want to be healthy, you got to lean on a nutritionist for the diet side, which is going to be diet and exercise. That's where you got to go. Quit going to the architect to figure out how to lay the bricks. The architect is to be respected. He's went to school for that. But the nuts and bolts of your health is going to be your diet and your exercise. Period. As someone who studied this and had doctors beside me in Stanford, this is what you got to do. And we don't need the government to figure this out for us. We already know what we're up against. So this is what we got to do. And our conversation should be, as you mentioned so eloquently, let's bridge these gaps. That's how we bridge it. We educate the people and we motivate them to become self-educated. And self-educating is part of not just the diet and nutrition side, but also understanding your markets. So you know what you, like you said, I need more iron. So you know what you need in your body. You probably got that from one of your blood tests, I would presume. Am I correct? Mark?
Actually, when you go, they test you, they take your vital signs and they test you to make sure that your levels are there. And then the levels are not there. You can't give the platelets. Yeah.
It's from a blood test. So so when you get your annual checkup, and you should be asking for an extensive annual checkup with all kinds of tests, ApoB protein, HDL, triglyceride ratio. There's all kinds of stuff that you need to get in order to stay ahead of the problems. And also understand epigenetics. Don't think my grandmama had, my mama had, that there's something called epigenetics, which you can suppress or disable those bad genes through your diet. And the more processed foods you eat, the more of the bad genes are going to take over your body. And the more quality food you eat and exercise, then you can suppress that. So that's
Dr. Mason. Okay, thank you, Brother Gill. Dr. Mason, this in your closing rounds, I want you to talk about in terms of in terms of Alzheimer's and dementia. We're seeing elevated numbers. My mother had dementia for several years before she transitioned. Is this or has there been a correlation between dementia and these declinations of the brain? Is this directly related to food?
Let me just say, if you want to really go to a good source, they have a brain center at Rush University Hospital. They're doing a lot of research in this a long time. So I think that what you do need to do, there are a number of nutrients that people who have cognitive disorders may have. And some of those are simple nutrients that we don't get because we're not getting it from the foods that we need. So what I would do is I would really like a second conversation around this problem. It's a huge, huge problem. It's a very, very debilitating situation. And yes, there are things in the brain. There's a video that when I'll get you the name of the video because it escapes me right now, but it's also it's actually a doctor whose father developed Alzheimer's, and they began to look at what caused that. So, and you can learn a lot by looking at things at the Rush Center. Yes, the diet, what we eating, again, we need to focus away from the words diet and need to focus toward the words of live it, because that's what that's what we're doing tonight. What you've done tonight is allow myself and the other gentleman and yourself to have a conversation, candid conversation about what we need to do ourselves. And I say it all the time, ain't no cavalry coming. No cavalry coming. And I love your spirit, brother, we got to do this ourselves. You cannot expect people that will hurt you to help you, because there's no value proposition around it, as I started this conversation. So I'll always be available, make myself available whenever you call. And I'd love to have further conversations, and I think this would be very, very helpful. And it's not a talk about don'ts. I'd rather talk about do's. what you should do, what you could eat, and how you can still enjoy things. But what does that song say? Whatever is thrilling you is killing me. So we need to just do that and have more of these conversations, because they're going to take a while, and give people a chance to ask questions, which I did on Sunday on my show.
All right, fantastic. Dr. Terry Mason, my good friend and a medical doctor, and Gil Thompson, who is, again, we have been brought an acquaintance over the last several years, since 2021. We are here talking about living and living healthy. We're going to continue to bring you these conversations. I'll talk with you, Gil, and talk to you, Dr. Mason, off the air, and when we'll have and bring back this next conversation and continue this conversation and have it more structured, geared towards a specific area. Certainly about dealing with food as it relates to the cognitive declinations that we see people are in our families that are having now, and how we can reverse that through foods and how we use those foods. I want to thank you all for being on the program tonight. Thank you all the viewers. You all, I want you to have a very, very healthy holiday season, whether you celebrate Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, or Christmas. And remember to forgive. When you forgive somebody else, you liberate yourself. Have a great holiday season. We'll talk to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Thanks.
Bye.